Downsizing, directed by Alexander Payne. The movie stars Matt Damon and Kristen Wiig. They play a couple who go by the names of Paul and Audrey Safranek, and they both decide to undertake a newly invented procedure which allows them to shrink their bodies and start living a new life in this downsized community where all the other people around the world decided to shrink themselves to escape the burdens of, fully grown life, you could say, of the burdens of life as a fully grown human being, like debt, money problems, and all of that. And this procedure that is discovered by scientists, they hope that it will actually be the solution to overpopulation on the planet, and also a way of slowing down global warming. And I was really attracted to, this very interesting concept that the film has. This concept of scientists finding a way to shrink life, to shrink people, to shrink animals, in a way of it being a way of battling global warming and problems like overpopulation. I found all of that very, very interesting, so I was very attracted to the concept of this movie. For me, this movie starts off really, really well. I was really, really enjoying it, especially when you witness the process of miniaturization, when they shrink, especially our main characters, when they go through that process of shrinking humans. I found it very interesting to see on the screen the way they went about it. It was very funny, and it was just bursting with imagination and creativity. I really enjoyed the first act of this movie, and like I said, it was just funny and bursting with imagination, and just to see it up on the screen how they did it, I liked it. And the effects to create this illusion were great to a point where the effects wasn't even visible. You couldn't see, as in, you'd have a scene involving a person that's been shrunk, and they're in a scene that's involving fully grown people, and it just felt real. It felt believable, and a lot of that I felt was down to the way they decided to shoot these scenes, certain camera angles, and the effects were that good that it didn't look like an effect. It looked as if there was actually a very small, person that had been shrunk about the size of a Funko Pop, maybe in a room among fully grown people. And it looked to a point where I was like, wow, that actually looks quite cool and real, and it felt real. And you could just tell that Alexander Payne, the director, was having a lot of fun with this movie. For example, you've got a giant rose that ends up becoming a centerpiece in your front room, to a nurse bringing a giant kraken in after Matt Damon's character wakes up from the procedure. Little things like that I found which were really sort of imaginative and fun, and you could just tell Alexander Payne was having a lot of fun with this, especially when it came to showing the process of shrinkage and what these characters were going through just before it and what they had to go through during it and all of that. That all happens during the first act, and it was great to see. I also like the idea, or the fact, that Payne uses downsizing as a way of dividing the people and causing this friction. And basically, downsizing as a result becomes this group of people that are all of a sudden they're affecting the economy back in sort of the fully grown world, you could say. So as a result of all of these people deciding they want to shrink themselves and go and live their lives out in this downsized community, it's actually affecting the economy in the fully grown world, and as a result that's causing friction and dividing people. And that is touched on in the film, and I like that idea. But like they do throughout this entire film, because this film has a very interesting concept, they touch on these really interesting ideas, but they never fully realize them. And so they only ever do touch on these ideas. You've got all these people who are escaping, their lives as a fully grown human being to be downsized, so they can run away from this financial burden they may have got, or whatever debt it is they've got on themselves. And as a result, they're ending up being better off, because whatever small amount of money they've got before they downsize, once they downsize, that translates into something, they could be like millions. They could, all of a sudden, they've got millions to their names. And so they are benefiting, but as a result of downsizing, they're leaving the people that don't want to downsize in a worse off position, you could say. And that is an idea that I liked and that they touch on, but all too briefly for me. And just like its concept, it touches and plays with some really interesting ideas, but never fully realizes them. And it's after the first act, this movie really takes a direction into it. It takes a different turn in direction. It goes into a completely different direction, and I didn't expect it to go down a path that it does. Not saying that it didn't sort of, to some degree, entertain me. I was still immersed into this story. It just became a little bit harder to follow, you could say. And it's a turn in direction that I didn't mind, but the deeper you went down the rabbit hole, the more muddled the plot became. It became very slow, and I started to lose interest, and I really struggled to sort of keep my interest in the story, just because of the way the story was executed. It was done. It became very uninteresting, and like I said, it was like the film starts off really well. You've got this good momentum, and then it takes a completely different turn, which I didn't mind, but it just became more of a slog, you could say, I do think the script affected this as well. I do think the movie had a very weak script, as well as the fact you had all these interesting ideas, this really interesting concept, but it didn't really do anything with it. And so, yeah, as a result, the second and third act of this film just became, real hard work to follow and to sit there and sort of, I did, even though I really wanted to see what the end result was, how this story sort of ended. To get there for me, it just became very dull and very uninteresting. And it's a shame because the film had a very interesting concept and so many interesting ideas. Performance-wise, I thought everyone was really good, actually. I really liked Matt Damon's performance, but his actual character needed a little more dimension to make him a little bit more compelling. And I think as a result of that also played into how I felt about the second and third act with this film. How the film became very sort of dull and uninteresting. And I think, that sort of played in to that, Matt Damon's character, Paul Safranek. His performance was good, just his character just was not as compelling as I wanted him to be, and didn't care really so much for the character that I would have wanted to, even though I sort of liked what Matt Damon did with the character. He provided some really funny moments as well. I didn't actually realise Matt Damon could be so funny, mind. I'm not a massive fan of Matt Damon, but I really liked what he did with his character. It's just a shame his character was sort of really, like the second and third act, really was kind of dull. Kristen Wiig was also really good as Matt Damon's wife. Again, she was quite funny in certain moments, and yeah, I really liked her performance. For me, Christoph Waltz and Chau stole the light from Matt Damon and his character. I really liked Christoph Waltz and Chau's performances in this film. They really stood out. I loved their characters. Christoph Waltz's character, I wish they explored a little bit more, but I liked what he did with his character, and again, found him very interesting, just very, very brief. You just didn't really get to know or find out more about this character. But I liked what he did with the role. He sort of really made me laugh and smile. And Chau, who plays a refugee, a Vietnamese refugee who escaped by hiding in a big TV box. She was really, really good in this movie. She is the emotional center of this film. She's the heart of this film, and she delivers such a great performance. And her performance is played to some degree for comic relief, just the way she sort of speaks. There's a moment where she lists all different types of facts. You've got love fact, you've got I can't actually remember all of them, but just the way she says them and all that. But at the same time, she also has a lot of moments which has a lot of emotion in them, and it gets you. I felt very emotional. It's because of how powerful her performance was, how good her performance was, and how real it felt. She did really steal the light from Matt Damon and his character in this film. It was a much more... Hong Chau's character was a much more interesting character and a much more compelling character. And it's her character alone that was one of the reasons which kept me sort of gripped and to the story during that second and third act. It's one of the reasons why I was sort of, to a point, the story still had my attention, and it's because of her and her character and her performance. So I sort of want to touch on the humour, the comedy, and I did like the humour in this film. There were moments in which I laughed, and I thought I shouldn't be laughing at this because it's wrong, but I'm laughing, and I love that type of humour. So yeah, a big thumbs up when it comes to the humour in this film. I really liked it, and it was the way it was done. So yeah, Downsizing. Starts off promising with some interesting ideas, but slowly spirals into becoming a little dull and very uninteresting. And it's a shame, really, because of the way this film starts out. And I was really looking forward to watching this film. I grew up watching films like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and all of that. And even though this had a lot more interesting ideas that it wanted to play with and it touched on, it just didn't fully realize them on the screen. And even though it retained my interest to a degree, it was still a struggle to follow because of the execution of its story. So for me, this was a little bit of a disappointment. I do think there are people out there that are going to go and see this film and be incredibly bored. As it was, there was just enough in this film to keep me entertained and, kept my attention when it came to the story. It is a little bit overlong. I easily think this film is something like 2 hours 15 minutes. I think they could have easily have cut this film just under 2 hours maybe. It only needed a little bit of trimming. It was overlong, and there was no reason for it to be, because just the way the story played out during that second and third act, the way the story was executed, it's a shame, really. But it's definitely worth a check. It's definitely worth you checking it out. I think there are people out there that are going to love it. I do think there are people out there that are really just are going to hate it and might actually end up leaving halfway through the screening. As it was for me, there was just enough in there to keep me entertained and gripped. So yeah, they are my views and thoughts of Downsizing, and I will be giving Downsizing a C+. What do you guys think of Downsizing? Have you seen it? It's only just come out here in the UK, but I'm sure it's been out a little bit longer in America. But yeah, I can't say I hated it. I liked what the film and the story explored. I liked what they did with the concept, of shrinking people, and it did have imagination and it had creativity. It just really struggled when it came to telling its story, I felt. But yeah, what do you guys think of Downsizing? Let me know below. And again, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. My next review will be for The Darkest Hour. So yeah, and I've also got an unboxer on the way as well. So yeah, thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you like what you see and you share the same passions as me, then why not hit subscribe?